Hello, my name is Mike Pettigrew, and today I'd like to talk about happiness. What is true happiness? What is true happiness, and how can we become truly happy and fulfilled in life? Now, most of us feel happy or elation when something wonderful happens, and on the other hand, we feel sad or disheartened when something doesn't go our way. So the question is, how can we sustain happiness? How can we reach a stage where we are happy most of the time, feeling fulfilled most of the time? And this is something I've looked at in great detail throughout my life. All my life I have been fascinated in studying the nature of the human mind and consciousness, and it has always been my thirst to understand how our minds operate, the connection between our mind and the universe, and how we affect our environment. And I am absolutely convinced through my own experiences that happiness is something that can be constructed. When I say happiness, I'm talking about long-term happiness, or you might say fulfillment. And what I've found, there are certain basic ingredients that enable us to feel a sustained sense of happiness. I am absolutely certain that if we wish to maintain happiness throughout our lives, there are certain basic ingredients that go to creating that. And it really boils down to our making efforts, because it's a fact that if in life we are not making sustained efforts at creating something, creating anything, but if we are taking the lazy approach, giving in to ourselves, that only results in disillusionment and disempowerment and unhappiness. On the other hand, if we look at the lives of people who are deeply happy and fulfilled in life, it boils down to a number of common factors. In every case, they are people who are very active, people who create constantly, people who do not give in to themselves, but people who are constantly working for the happiness of others as well as themselves, and constantly making efforts. It really comes down to efforts. But what sort of efforts do we need to make? Well, I think one big thing is learning to master our minds, because it's like our minds are made up of two different minds. The part of ourselves that says, don't bother, it's a waste of time, or you could never do it. That part of ourselves that for many of us is quite loud. The part of ourselves that dominates our mind and keeps us very, very, very small. That part of our mind, that negative voice, can do incredible damage and can hold us back from achieving all sorts of amazing things throughout our lives if we allow it to. And learning to master our own mind rather than allowing it to master us is really, really important to becoming happy and fulfilled. So what I'm saying here is, it takes self-discipline. Happiness and self-discipline go hand in hand. If we are not self-disciplined, and if we are just allow our minds to buffet us here and there depending on what happens in our environment, we cannot become happy. It's completely impossible. So self-discipline is very important. Self-discipline is incredibly important to constructing long-term sustained happiness. Another key ingredient to becoming happy and fulfilled is actually creating big goals for our lives, creating big visions for our future, and taking action to achieve those goals. It is imperative that we make goals for ourselves regularly. And if goal setting is something we're not familiar with, and if we have a very low feelings of empowerment, if we feel it's no point making great goals for ourselves, if we feel that we just couldn't achieve them, then we need to start in a small way by setting small goals. And once we gain confidence that goal setting works, we can create much bigger goals for ourselves. So creating goals that we need to accomplish is very, very, very important. Having that constant forward momentum is what invigorates us, it is what empowers us, it is what infuses our lives with energy. Without setting concrete goals for our lives, we really are buffeted about by circumstances, and we're almost like a ship that's adrift on the ocean. Having a concrete goal and moving towards it energizes us in every way imaginable. So it's incredibly worthwhile doing this. Another key ingredient in becoming happy is to be consistent, because there is no use stopping and starting, because that only results in disillusionment and resentment, and we don't want that. So consistent daily efforts towards accomplishing our goals is a key ingredient also to achieving a sustained happiness in our life. Also, another factor that I've found is developing flexibility of mind. Now, when things don't go particularly well, it's natural to feel a bit disillusioned and upset, and when we hit a wall of obstacles and we just cannot seem to get through and we can't find a way, it's important to continue keep moving forwards, even though we don't have all the answers immediately to hand, even if it looks like we're scaling Mount Everest, to constantly have the motivation and focus to constantly move forward, not to give in to problems, but also to be, as I say, very flexible in what happens to us. It's important to set very clear goals and keep ourselves accountable to achieving those goals, but when things don't go the way we had hoped, or as quick as we had hoped, then we just need to be more flexible. This is a very key component in happiness. Rigidity and inflexibility is awful. It just hurts ourselves and those around us. But when we can be very flexible in our thinking, it is a very important part of developing sustained happiness. Also, we need to develop a winning attitude and never giving up. As I say, when things do not go our way, we to constantly battle through no matter what. At first it can be very, very difficult, and it can be a bit like exercising an arm that hasn't been exercised in a long time. At first it hurts, but as time goes by, the process gets so much easier. And it's true to say, if we study the lives of very successful people who have made a major difference in society, they are people who have learnt how not to give in. They are people who have learnt through real hardship in life that when the going gets tough, the only way to achieve success is to keep going, And the inventor Thomas Edison was asked once in an interview, how come he continually kept moving forwards? How come he never gave up in inventing the incandescent light bulb when he failed 1,000 times? And he told the reporter that each time he failed, he knew he was one step closer to success, because he had discovered yet another way that the incandescent light bulb would not work. Okay? So never giving up is really, really important. In fact, never giving in to our difficulties is actually more important than it may appear at first, because we can actually use our difficulties in life and our challenges as a springboard for happiness and success. That may sound crazy. When there are difficulties, we think everything is stopped, everything is ended, we cannot possibly achieve our goal. But that is absolutely incorrect. Because, as I say, our difficulties can be a springboard for success. No matter what goal we set for our lives, no matter what things we wish to achieve, the moment we set a concrete, clear, precise goal in our minds, we invoke from the environment challenges. And those challenges are are only the very things that are preventing us from achieving our goal. So to put it in another way, the only way to achieve anything major for our lives is a certain degree of inner change. So when we make a very clear determination or goal and set about to achieve it, as I say, we invoke from the environment things that challenge us in ways which force us to grow. And when that inner growth takes place, we achieve our goal. It's as simple as that. So never giving in to our difficulties is really worth testing, this principle. And there's also one more factor that I believe is necessary for sustained happiness. And this is working for the happiness of other people. We cannot, as human beings, be happy in a vacuum. We need each other. And it's a fact to say that when we try and alleviate the suffering of those around us in any way we can, it opens up our own lives. It makes us more, it develops our compassion. It's amazing. I've experienced this on many, many occasions where someone comes to me and they have a big problem, and I find myself really listening to the person, really trying to understand really what is the root of the problem. And by focusing on another person's life in that way, it's like our minds operate on a different level. It's like we tap into our higher self. And I have, on many occasions, heard things, concepts, or what would you say, analogies come out of my mouth that I'd never heard before. And I find myself saying to myself, I must use that one again. That was quite good. So amazing things can happen when we work for the happiness of those around us. We potently, far more potently, connect to our higher selves. The source of all our wisdom and the source of all our great ideas. And when we draw on this great wisdom, we operate on a much higher level. And when we do this regularly, we can achieve a lot more for ourselves. So it's really important to work for the happiness of others in any shape or form we can. And we can look at this and think, my goodness, you know, I'm too shy. I can't possibly help other people. But even though it may not seem it, I was incredibly shy back in my late teens and early 20s. And just constantly keeping an eye on our environment and those around us and really supporting them in any way we can. It might be as simple as a smile to someone on the street, or putting an arm around someone who's having a rough time. We don't have to display incredible wisdom, not at all, but have an outward-looking attitude. That is a very key component to developing long-term sustained happiness. Now, when we do all these things that I just mentioned, well, firstly, we become more empowered. We also become far more accepting of ourselves and others. We develop a lot more inner strength and courage, and we develop a lot more appreciation for life rather than being resentful and complaining. And finally, we start to take 100% responsibility for our lives. Because when we take 100% responsibility for our lives, anything becomes possible. Anything becomes possible. We truly become the master of our own lives. We truly become the captain of our own lives. We write our own story of life. We can achieve anything when we take full 100% responsibility. So to summarize, developing sustained happiness and fulfillment depends on, number one, setting big goals. Setting big goals for ourselves that stretch our lives. Number two, making consistent daily actions towards achieving those goals. And the next factor is becoming more self-disciplined. rather than allowing our minds to master us, we need to master our minds. We also need to develop greater flexibility when things don't go as we had hoped. Also, never giving in to difficulties and challenges, but always continuing to battle through and keep moving forwards. And finally, giving to others in any shape or form that we can. When we work for the happiness of others, we are assured of our own long-term happiness. So it's incredibly important. And I'd really like to thank you for watching this short video today. And if you'd like to watch other videos and other similar topics, just click on the link above to videos, or there are podcast versions if you click on podcasts, and we also have a blog. And the videos that you see in the video section are just sample videos. They are not all the videos that I've produced. If you want to receive one email a week from me each time I release a new video, then please fill out the form on the side of this page, because when you do, you will receive an email once a week alerting you to any new videos I post. These videos in most cases will not be in the normal video section, but in a private membership site, and there's no cost for this membership. But if you don't fill out the form on the side, at the side of this page with your name and email address, you won't be alerted to these. And as I say, there will be quite very few videos posted in the public area of this website. So once again, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.